Final hour Overdrive continues, brought to you by FanDuel, bringing you everything from the opening line to the final score. We got Pierre LeBrun coming up in just a few moments. The Tigers are off to the ALDS. I think a lot of people in Toronto, you're looking for a team to connect with, and I know there used to be a lot of bad blood between the Tigers and the Jays back in the day, but that has softened a lot, as the years have gone on and the divisions have been split up. The fact that they got red hot down the stretch, got in, and then went down to Houston and beat them in 2 straight. Andy Dirks will join us, who was a former Tiger outfielder himself, part of the radio broadcast team. He's coming up in half an hour on what happened here. How did the Tigers get so hot, and how cool is this story? And maybe we jump on their bandwagon a little bit.
There's 20 guys in the league, I think, that make more than their whole team.
That's crazy.
That is crazy.
I think their whole team makes 24, 25 million, and there's somebody sent me the message yesterday. My buddy Blades is a massive Detroit Tigers fan, and he's been suffering for years. Mm-hmm. He goes to games, and I look at that, and I'm like, man, that's tough to keep supporting that. But he's diehard, and he's so fired up, and he sent me a message yesterday saying there's 20-something guys in the league that make more than their whole team.
Yeah.
One guy.
I read this morning, and I almost don't think this is accurate because I think the Yankees would total more. But Kansas City, Cleveland, Detroit, their total roster and payroll costs about the same as the Yankees. But I don't even think that – I got to look that up because I feel like the Yankees are up over $300 million, and there's no way those 3 teams combined for over $300 million.
You see my boy yesterday, Bobby Witt Jr.?
He's a stud. Yeah,
that's what I'm talking about. The difference between him and Vladdy, a guy that's sleeping at second base in an eliminate. It's a big difference.
Well, we got one more ball game tonight in the wild card. You got Milwaukee and the Mets, and Padres are through, and now they're going to play the Dodgers. What a matchup that's going to be. I
got a soft spot for the Mets. I don't know why. They've just been so dysfunctional. Their owner seems to be a lunatic.
Yep.
And it's been they had Buck Showalter there. It has been a gong. But I just have a soft spot for the fan base. It's you got to have something positive happen for these guys.
Right. And if they win, they go to Philly. So you'll have a battle of the NL East and a battle of the NL West. And then the Royals are going to Yankee Stadium and the Tigers are playing the Guardians. So more on that later in the hour. Pierre LeBrun coming up here in a moment. I just unveiled 10 players and coaches on Canadian teams that I think are facing the most pressure to help their respective franchises meet their own respective expectations. Berube, St. Louis, Demko, Green, Skinner, Allmark, Matthews, Pedersen, Hellebuck, McDavid at the top. You guys challenged some of that, challenged the slotting of some of it, but did I miss anybody?
Yes. You want me to give you a quick 3-pack that I wrote down?
Yes.
I have got Mitchell Marner, Maple Leafs. It's just a big year. Lots been said, lots been talked about, lots
contract
been bandied. Contract, all of it. Just success of the team. His standing on the team, what ultimately ends up happening to their goaltender, Joseph Wall. I saw you picked a lot of goaltenders. I thought for sure he was going to be at number 1. And I got our buddy Josh Norris in Ottawa. He's got to be a big-time performer for them. He's got to try to stay healthy, which is the biggest hurdle. Mm-hmm. But he's got to play. He's got to be a part of the solution there and the reason they get better.
I'll add one more on Ottawa. We talked about him yesterday, Brady Tkachuk.
Yep, for sure.
Brady's been in the league 7 years, and he's a captain. Listen, he's towed the line personally. If you just want to talk about stats, here's a guy, close to 40 goals and a bunch of points, 125 penalty minutes. The guy either scores or fights. That's really what it is. But when you're talking about the overarching situation, he's the captain of that team. He's got to drag it to that next level, too. So there's a lot of pressure in Ottawa. I think you could spread it around to a bunch of guys. But, the head of the snake is Brady there. He's the man there. So, I would say he would put that pressure on himself to help them to be either a playoff team or right close to it.
I was trying to find a spot for him, and I'm like, I have Green and Allmark ahead of him because they're new.
Yeah.
The coach and the goalie, I think it's mandatory they got those right. So there's only so many Ottawa Senators you can have in there. It's a 10-pack. I didn't have a Calgary Flame. No one from the Flames. Is that fair? I mean,
I think it kind of goes with their expectations.
Exactly. That's my thing. What are their expectations? To tank and win the lottery? What are they hoping for? I don't even know.
I don't know. I think they're more looking to surprise people with young players. That's it. When you've got a young team, that's what you're going to do. You've got some guys there, though. That's like Huberdeau. I guess you wouldn't even would you put Huberdeau under the pressure?
No.
He's given up on him.
I've given up on that.
Jonathan Huberdeau?
That ship has sailed, man. That's somewhere down in Australia. That ship is gone, oceans away. I don't know. I guess I think there's more pressure on like Craig Conroy I might have on the list if I included management. Right? If management was included in this, Shanahan would be there. Conroy would be there.
They weren't an option though, correct?
I just did players and coaches. I took management out. Maybe management pops up tomorrow. Maybe I do a little Hayesy be listed on a Friday. We'll see what happens. Here's Pierre LeBrun, our TSN Hockey Insider. I guess we'll ask you about Calgary because we just were talking about it. Does anyone have pressure there? Like, what are the expectations? What are the Calgary Flames, in your opinion?
Well, they're a team in transition, and once they finally got the green light to trade Jacob Markstrom, which they should have done, I think, at the trade deadline last year. But there was this sense that let's stay competitive, and to the end of the year they were playing good hockey at the time, and whether or not there was pressure from ownership to not tank at the time, but you knew they were going to end up trading him because I think that's what he wanted, and he ends up exactly where we all thought he would end up in New Jersey. But I would have made that trade at the deadline.
Pierre, is that all GMs need to do these days to kind of keep the flies off, is to blurt it out early? You saw the Rangers years back when they unloaded McDonough and a bunch of different players. They said, we're just not good enough now and we're going to get younger and have different players. Montreal Canadiens made a movie about it. And, is that all you have to say is we're a team in transition to keep the flies off?
By the way, what I think is funny, isn't the Habs behind the scenes thing on is it called the rebuild?
Yes.
Yeah.
The funny thing about that is the word that Jeff Gordon and Ken Hughes really tried to avoid after they came on. They didn't want to give it memory. They didn't want to give it a term, which I thought was smart because I think what they were saying is let's just get younger and better, but we don't have to put a term on it. But now they I guess they've given up on not calling it a rebuild. So I kind of got a kick out of that. To answer your question, O-Dog, I mean, the biggest thing I've seen, and I guess it's always been like this, but I feel like it's more pronounced now. Never mind what your market is expecting. The biggest thing I'm seeing now is, front offices managing up. And a lot of what you hear from them at start of the season really stems from what they've sold upstairs. And so, when it comes to the Flames, whatever Craig Conroy and that front office, Don Maloney have sold to the ownership group there, led by Murray Edwards, is really, that's what they're selling publicly too, which is, we're a team in transition. We hope to be competitive. My point is, the Habs came out at their golf tournament earlier in September and said, hope to play meaningful games in March. I think that's exactly what management told Jeff Molson, right? So I'm seeing more of having to manage up now than I've ever seen, I would say, in all the years.
Yeah. It's funny how with the Jays, it's meaningful games in September. I guess in the NHL, that's what it is, meaningful games in March and April. And I understand that. If you're the Habs, you're hoping for that. I guess if you're Ottawa, are you hoping for that? Or do you have to blow through that? Like, is Andlauer cool with meaningful games in March? Or even though he's only been there for a year and a half, has he decided that's not enough? You got to make the playoffs.
Yeah, I think they've been more careful in how they turned it. I actually had a chance to catch up briefly with Andlauer at the Board of Governors meeting there. We talked about Ullmark and wanting to sign him eventually. But, I think Ottawa, let's just deal with the elephant in the room. There was all these, sort of strange what's going on with Brady Tkachuk's future innuendo out there again last year, right? And I actually went straight to Steve Stais twice, I think, in the last year where he said, ridiculous, that we're never going to trade that guy. But, I think where all that stems from is maybe people in Tkachuk's orbit saying, where is this team headed? And I think this is a big year from that perspective, right? Is this team, showing signs of serious progress of being a playoff contender, if not making the playoffs outright. And I think they have a shot after acquiring Ullmark. But if they don't, then at least being in the race to the end. I think that's really big for them. And because they've got a lot of people to convince here, not just Tkachuk, but they got Ullmark only has a year left on his deal. What does he want to do with his future? Claude Giroux's on the last year of his deal. So I think there's a lot of things in place here where you got a solid owner, a new management group, but it's time to make a step in Ottawa, and I think they will.
Yeah, I think they will. I mean, I think meaningful games, but I think the expectations, and that's where I was going to go. Hayes just had this expectations list, and he had some pretty interesting names on there. Yeah, I mean, let's bring it closer to home with the Leafs. He had Craig Berube high on the list, and then he had Austin Matthews. Who do you believe is under the gun when it comes to the Maple Leafs? Not just the whole organization, but individually to prove that this team can get it done in the playoffs or even to the next level.
Yeah, I mean, I saw that Brian had Craig Berube on the list. I mean, I guess the de facto argument is that every single person in the history of time that's coached the Leafs has been under pressure. So I guess you can't have, you have to have him on there. But I would say that I think he's got lots of rope to play with here in terms of being in his first year. I mean,
do you think Leaf fans are cool with that? Craig eases into this, and Leaf fans are going to let him.
What does that
even
mean, though, Pierre? He's got lots of rope.
I don't see it.
Well, I mean, it's not like he replaced the coach who brought the team to the Stanley Cup final.
No, he's here to bring the Stanley Cup final.
It's not a shot at Sheldon Keefe, but I mean, the bar is not exactly high.
No, true.
I mean, I guess I'm looking at it from that perspective. I mean, making the playoffs and hopefully winning a round or two would be considered a pretty good year, is it not? I mean, obviously they want to win a cup, and I consider the Leafs among the elite 8 teams in the league. But when I think of pressure, man, if Craig Berube gets the Leafs in the second or third round, I think this market would be over the moon myself.
Well, yeah, but that's what I'm saying. He's got to get there. Right, like if he falls short, if he misses the playoffs, do you think any Leaf fan's going to say, "Hey, it's your first year, Craig. Don't worry about it, pal. Let us know down the road when you feel like you're comfortable here"? That's not going to happen.
I mean, let's be real. The GM's only in his second year. The coach is in his first year. The bullseye's on the president. Brendan Shanahan's going into year 11. Come on, let's be real. He's been here a long time, and the team has come a long way in terms of its brand and its business operations and everything. Like, there's been a lot of good under Brendan Shanahan, but it's not been good enough where it matters most. And if you're going to get me to put a bullseye on someone in the organization, it has to be him, like just by longevity.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, he stands out, I think, above the rest of executives, maybe in the country. Maybe in the league, for that matter, because of how long he's been here and how good it went for him when he got here. Everything turned around. Everything was positive. Now you got ownership change. You got Keith Pelley in there, who's the president of MLSC.
Mm-hmm.
And, Shanahan's been the mainstay. He's been here the whole time. So I would agree with that. I think there's certainly pressure on him. In terms of the McDavid conversation, I had McDavid at the top of the list because my explanation was that he separated himself from all but 8, 10, 12, maybe 15 players all time. Like, he's played himself into a category where we're talking single digits of legacies that can be compared to him. And pretty much every single player in there, in fact, all of them, have a Stanley Cup. Like, he's in a group with players that have Stanley Cups, and a lot of them have multiple Stanley Cups. Mm-hmm. Until he gets one, how much pressure do you think applies to Connor McDavid?
I mean, I totally get where you're coming from. I think the thing that I struggle with when you talk about the players and their legacies on that list is a league that's gone from 21 to 32 teams. And, the Oilers, one win away from a Stanley Cup, and I get it. That's not good enough. But I just think the idea of, your legacy is not cemented unless you win a cup. I think for sure it ends all arguments if he could finally win one. But there's 32 teams, man, and there's so many good teams that haven't won. I mean, I think of the Dallas Stars, and I'm like, how have they not won in this current setup with their team? I was with them in the second round, and I'm like, this team's going to win it all. I was convinced. And then they lost in the next round. But my point is, I don't know. I feel like some of those names that you're talking about in that list that Connor McDavid's clearly on, they were in an era where really you thought every year was among 2, 3, maybe 4 teams, and those guys were on it. It's 8 to 10 now, man. It is 8 to 10, and the math is just harder, no matter how great you are, to make sure that you win one, quote unquote. And so I guess I'm coming to his defense in case he doesn't win one, but I'm just saying it is harder than ever.
There's no question about that. Now, same thing in the NFL, and Patrick Mahomes isn't sitting there saying, hey, 30 teams, man, come on. You know, like Mahomes is like, great, throw whatever you got at me. Different sport, different position, undoubtedly. But, 30 teams in the NBA, LeBron's got a bunch of rings. You know, I hope it's not a reality for him. That's why it just sucks that they just didn't get it, and then it's over and it's done, because he's so great. He defines what a generational player is, and he's going into year 10. And everything you said is factual. Like, it's very difficult to win. It's very difficult. And I think, again, it is important to point out, like, Gordie Howe had 5 other teams he was playing against. 4 of them made the playoffs, or 3 of them, right? It was you had to win 8 games and you won the Stanley Cup. Now you got to win 16. But if he doesn't get one, like, that just feels like a nightmare for the NHL to have a player of this status not winning.
And just to counter my own argument, I mean, obviously Sidney Crosby in the modern day has won 3 cups, right?
Yep.
I mean, he's gotten it done, and so listen, for sure. I mean, no one wants it more than him, and his drive is unreal. But I just, I think back to how so many great teams lose out early in these playoffs. I mean, Vegas Game 7 loses by a goal to Dallas in the first round. Vegas could have easily won that series and ended up back in the Cup final. Like, it's just, I guess what I'm saying is, I know we're a result-oriented business, but it's unbelievable to me the razor-edge thin difference between the top teams in this league.
Pierre, in your experience through negotiations, ones that get a little testy, like the Swayman one, is there like a lull now where you'll hear nothing for multiple weeks, or will this kind of bring it to a head, and do you expect something to get done rather swiftly?
I know they're still talking, though. To your point, I did happen to see Cam Neely at the Board of Governors meeting Tuesday, which was the day after he made headlines at the news conference in Boston. And the reason I asked him for further comment is only because since he had made that comment, Louis Gross had come out with a statement, refuting some of it. And so I gave Neely a chance to retort, but he very politely declined and said that, I'm done talking. So to your point, I think both sides want to go quiet here and trying to get this done. I don't think they're actually that far on the numbers. Where I don't know where this is going is that I think we have an athlete with some pretty sore feelings here right now from the organization, and not just from what's transpired in this negotiation and this week, but also I don't think the arbitration process a year ago was something that he easily got over either. So that's the part where, like, I think financially, I think they can find a sweet spot, but where is the relationship at is the other part of this.
Well, I mean, again, just kind of reading articles out of Boston, and that wasn't, again, this is more of a Boston slant, but they could have taken a 2-year award here, or, for out of that arbitration. And they didn't. They did 1 year, and, again, Boston slant going, hey, we're going to negotiate in good faith that you can cash in after a good year type of thing. And now they are going to cash in regardless. It's going to be a massive number. So to me, there still has to be, I think there's a lot of emotion involved, Pierre, but Don't you think cooler heads should prevail at some point?
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure how far away they are financially. If it's $1 million or less, they should find a sweet spot here sooner or later, shouldn't they?
Yeah, I think they will in the end. And the regular season starts next week. For the Bruins, and like most teams, and I think that's an important timeline for both sides. I do think this gets done. But it's been a fascinating negotiation for so many reasons. We talked about this with Shesterkin last week, guys, so we don't have to go over that again. But it's the same thing. It's the goalie trying to fight through some contracts that other goalies have accepted, right? UC Saros just signed an 8-year extension, which doesn't even kick in for another year at $7.74 million a year. For sure, the Bruins would be pointing to that. And yet, if you're Jeremy Swayman, it's like, well, that's his deal. He doesn't want to leave Nashville where there's no income tax or state income tax, but that doesn't mean I have to sign that. And so I can see both sides. And yet, certainly, if you're the Bruins, you're saying, well, Saros has been a number one starter for 5+ years. So you can go back and forth until you're blue in the face, but I think what's happening here is that Swayman and Shesterkin are going against the grain here. They're going against the marketplace and saying enough with goalies settling for less. Connor Hellebuck signed for $8.5 million. Somehow he's making $3 million less than William Nylander. But I guess everyone's okay with that. I don't know. I mean, it's interesting.
I'm not. But everybody else is.
He signed it. He signed it. And, Willie's the only guy that always comes up. Pedersen's making 11.6. There's a lot of guys making big-time money. And but you're right. It feels like something's going to change here. It's just a matter of when. All right, Pierre, we'll leave it there. Thank you for this.
Right on. See you, boys.
Pierre LeBrun, our TSN Hockey Insider, joining us here on the Maple Toyota Hotline. I guess Jeremy Swayman wrote down a list of the Bruins' criticisms from the 2023 arbitration hearing.
I've told you all about those.
I know. You've been through it. And
it's tough, man.
He said he just read it. He kept the list, and he read it recently, and he said, I guess on Amazon, quote, "Hearing you're not worthy of what you think you're worthy of, that was hard to hear. You don't forget what was said. I wrote them down, and I looked at them the other day, and I had a couple of check marks. My biggest knock from the Bruins was how I wasn't trustworthy in the playoffs. Now it's a check. I mean, I would say so. The guy pushed Ullmark out in the first round, and second round was pretty good. So that's what I think is happening here. Is Ullmark's all bent out of shape because Don Sweeney went in there and said, "You're basically Goldberg from the Mighty Ducks, and we don't want to pay you." And
that's what they do. They trash talk you. I know my King Daddy Topper line.
Mm-hmm.
I've been involved in hockey for 35 years, and that performance in the playoffs from Jeff O'Neill was maybe the worst I've ever seen. I was like, what the hell?
Yeah, that one
tough
hurts.
To hear.
That hurts.
But that's you somewhere cooler ahead. You don't want to go in that arbitration. You'll either sign the deal or you shouldn't be in there. I don't know how that is. But
but you leave the arbitration, Jamie, and your thinking is, first of all, your first thought is, of all the players that have been just not handed, but they have no problems with their contracts, and you think of yourself as a gamer and a guy that does a lot, and you're the only guy going through this. And the second thing you think of is when they're saying that stuff, why do they even want me, period? If you're going to have the balls to go in that room, in that boardroom, and say that stuff, when you're saying it, you're like, why would you even want me? Let me go somewhere else.
Here's a question for you, O. And you're the only one who could speak to it here, the three of us. You went through it. What were you asking for? What did you end up getting? Was it worth it? That would be my question.
That's the worst thing. The organization called me after. I was awarded. They were offering $850 or $900, and I got 1.5. And then I got a call saying after it was awarded, that's probably what you deserved anyway. And I'm like, really, man? Why the hell didn't you just give me that then?
Well, that's what bothers me about all of this. I understand. Now, we talk about it all the time. You should use offer sheets, part of the CBA. Arbitration is a part of pro sports. I get it. But if you believe that player is going to fall there anyways, take out all the personal nonsense that actually, fractures a relationship. Because if Swayman, it sounds like he's taken personal notes here, which you just read, Hayes. He's pissed. So even if he signs for $8.25 million tomorrow, it's going to take a while to repair that relationship with the organization. They'll still do it, and he's
Trust
a great
me, it's
goalie.
just like Jerry Jones said. I've never seen a guy's feelings hurt after he gets the money. So as soon as he signs his contract and he's making 8 or 8.5 or 8.8 or 9, he'll forget about the comments. But it's just best. You want to feel like he's probably like, this is my time to go with the Boston Bruins, be their guy. He would rather be celebrated, like, let's get this guy locked up long term and get it out of the way and kind of be celebrated, as opposed to, oh, God, we're got to pay this guy to be our starting goaltender. There's a big difference there in kind of the feeling of the player and the motivation going into the season.
Yeah, especially if it's close. Like if he's asking for another $500,000 and that's going to make him happy and get over what happened in the past.
Yeah.
And they're like, absolutely not. And listen, they have to negotiate. They got to get the best deal possible. Like every dollar counts. So I understand where the Bruins are coming from.
And guys, from the player's standpoint, and this is probably one thing that's got to be driving Swayman nuts. It seems like we're living in the era where a guy comes in the league and he plays 3 years and he scores 14 goals in the third year, and here's 8 times 8. And if it's Pettersson, it's like, oh, he wants a new okay, here's 11.5 times 8. And it just seems like just to be this automatic contract type of thing. And then it gets to Swayman, who's this up-and-comer. Noodles, you could say if he's a stud or not. He sure looks like a stud.
I think he is.
And all of a sudden, there's this big fuss about it. And he's got to be thinking, why isn't there the smooth sailing where it seems like 80% of the league and guys that do squat get? So that's what probably pisses him off the most.
Absolutely.
And you don't want anything handed to you, but he's probably said, I'm a part of the deal here. I'm one of the guys. I'm one of the main guys. Why am I the one dealing with this crap?
Well, and until he signs, I guess he'll continue to be dealing with it. And their season starts in a week, and we'll see if he's going to be ready to play or sign by that point. Best bets coming up, and more on the great story, the Detroit Tigers. We'll get into that. Overdrive continues, TSN 1050 and on TSN 2. All right, today's best bets are powered by FanDuel. Make your picks and assemble a same-game parlay in seconds on the FanDuel Sportsbook app. Looking at the NFL game tonight, Thursday nighter. All right, we're going to play the Falcons' money line here on this parlay, so you can get rid of the points. Falcons' money line tonight. Bucky Irving, who's a rookie running back. I got him for 40-plus yards tonight. And Kirk Cousins, 2+ passing touchdowns. Primetime Kirk on Thursday night. He loves the lights on Thursday. He loves being a home favorite on Thursday. Al's brother supplied all those numbers earlier today, right? And stats are numbers are losers are nerds, or whatever it was from Kelsey. But there it is. Falcons money line, Bucky Irving, 40-plus yards rushing tonight. Cousins, 2+ passing yards. That's paying plus 437. Love that SGP tonight. Today's best bets powered by FanDuel. FanDuel Sportsbook app is the exclusive home of the Overdrive same-game parlay. Please play responsibly, 18+, physically located in Ontario.
Troublesome trend for you. A lot of tweets coming in saying, it's kind of a standard thing we fade Hayes and Bro now.
Yeah, it's a little concerning.
I know it is, man.
You know what I mean? Like you have a performance like you guys have had the last 2 or 3 weeks, but at the end of the day, you can erase it all with one performance.
That's the beauty of it being so early in the season. You know, is we have to get off the snide here. We got to start picking winners. We've had some really tough games. We've been asking people, though, who are the villains of this Overdrive NFL pick, and the Pro Athlete Salute is now in the lead at 52%.
Really?
That's concerning.
So a lot of people look at you two, you and your boy Luke Wilson, as villains, as bad guys, as people that they just simply don't want to be associated with. And Al's brother and we're men of the people, and that's the beauty of it. I would suggest that that's exactly what the Detroit Tigers are. You know, I can't say that up here in Toronto people are loving the city of Detroit historically, right? The Leafs are in Detroit tonight playing the Red Wings. A lot of history there. We don't love it. You know, we don't love it. Obviously, the Jays and the Tigers have had a long, long history, especially back in the day, late 70s through the 80s. But it's softened a little bit, I'd say, in the last 15, 20 years. But this Tigers team, getting red hot down the stretch, getting into the playoffs, going down to Houston, knocking them out in 2 games, storming back last night. Now they're off to Cleveland, and they're in the ALDS. This is the coolest story going right now. And here is a former Tigers outfielder, Detroit Tigers radio broadcaster, Andy Dirks. What's happening, Andy? How much fun has this ride been for you?
I think fun is an understatement. Mm-hmm. When something shocks you this much and it's that much of a surprise, and like you said, everybody's talking about Tigers baseball. It's been just phenomenal for the city.
How did this start? Nobody projected this. I mean, are we talking about a movie after the playoffs if they go on a really deep run? Like, what do you think happened where it all came together for A.J. Hinch and the team?
Yeah, it's definitely a Cinderella story, but I think it all started with A.J. in the very beginning. When he took over this role, he knew there was gonna be some lean years for the Tigers, kind of in that rebuild mode. Got some good prospects, some young guys, and finally this year, the plan was let's get the youth up to the big leagues, kind of second half of the season, and give these guys some at-bats and some opportunity. Happened to come around trade deadline. They got rid of their second-best pitcher right at the trade deadline, and next thing you know, Jack Flaherty. And they bring up a bunch of guys from AAA. They bring in some youth. They trade, and get Trey Sweeney at shortstop, and basically they have a bunch of rookies that go out, and they really didn't care who they were playing. They just attacked every game. They're reckless. They're wild. They're athletic. And it's a brand of baseball that's really fun to watch. It's a creative brand of baseball. It's a little bit different than like your traditional, roll out some big arms and hit some homers. These guys run the bases. Who knows who's going to pitch what inning? They come out, they're throwing 98. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I mean, you consider, like you said, kind of sellers at the trade deadline and thinking this just isn't their year. They're going to push it over, and then they get red hot through August. They're basically unbeatable in September. They get in, and then they go down to Houston. Now that we know the result, I mean, I guess it makes sense considering how well they're playing. But that's the cream of the crop in the American League, maybe in Major League Baseball for the last decade, is Houston. Like, they just know how to win. They've won World Series. They're in the ALCS seemingly every single year. How big of a surprise was the playoff success the last couple of days?
I think anybody that's followed the team pretty closely wasn't surprised. Just because the way this team has played the last month and a half has basically been playoff baseball. I mean, we've been watching these guys scratch, fight, and claw day in and day out for like a month and a half. And there was a point in there where I was like, man, I don't know if they'll be able to kind of sustain that type of energy, the level of play, for that longer, if they'll run out of gas. And they've proven they didn't run out of gas. I mean, the plays that are made day in and night in with this team are just off the charts. I'm talking guys are robbing home runs, guys are diving, making plays on ESPN Top 10 every night. And these are guys who are under the radar. They're not household names, right? So everybody's looking around going, what is going on here? Going into the Houston series, everybody's like, well, they have no playoff experience. And they just go into Houston and roll them like it's no big deal. They were down a run going into the eighth inning yesterday, put up a 4 spot, and that's what they've done all year. It doesn't matter, like, who's on the mound. They don't care. These guys just take names. They don't care. They're like out taking souls from people that are on the mound. The opposing managers, they're a nightmare for the opposing managers, and nobody wants the Tigers in their city right now to play baseball against.
Yeah, it really is an incredible story. We're chatting with Andy Dirks, former Tiger and part of the Tigers radio broadcast. Again, the Tigers now are off to Cleveland, so let's turn the page. You got a divisional rival here. The Guardians have been the best team in the Central all year. They've been a really good team, and they're waiting for you. Yet there's a lot of history between these two teams. Based on what you're telling us here, I would assume you feel really good about the Tigers' chances. How do you see this series playing out?
It's going to come down to pitching. Obviously, in the playoffs, whoever pitches the best in the postseason wins. The Tigers don't have like a traditional starting rotation, but they do have a Tarek Skubal, who's the best pitcher in Major League Baseball. Reese Olson's outstanding. And then out of that bullpen, once that bullpen door swings open, they have some bulk guys in Hannafy and Herter that are just pitching out of their minds. A guy named Sean Gunther came up from AAA. And it's like everybody's elevated their game to a status where they don't want to be the guy that doesn't get it done. They look next to the guy next to him. He's absolutely shoving the rock. And it's like night in and night out. They're all just hanging out. It's like a bunch of college guys playing baseball. It just happens to be at the big league level.
Yeah, it's incredible. And yet that's kind of been Cleveland's vibe for a long time, right? Like, it's never about $200 million payrolls. It's always, like guys are like, they make it and then they got to leave. And I'm curious where this goes for the Tigers. Like you mentioned, they got a lot of some kids who are well known, some high draft picks, Torkelson and others. But like once you get through this and we get to the offseason, how much commitment would you expect from ownership, and how much better could this get? Like is this the first chapter of something great in Detroit, or do you think they've just found some lightning in a bottle here?
No, I think it is. I think it's a long-term play. We're just seeing a lot of fruit earlier than we expected. When Scott Harris took over the organization, he basically said, we're going to get more youthful, we're going to get more athletic, and we're going to build a core. And the only way you can build a core is, prep guys through the minor leagues to get up to the big leagues and then see what they do at that level. And it's working. We got so much young talent right now that's producing in the big league level. It would be crazy to think, the next four years for Tigers baseball would be bleak. Now, are there some pieces that would be nice to add? Of course. Those are going to be off-season discussions. As far as having maybe a couple veteran bats, obviously the rotation might have to get managed a little bit because, to play 162 games the way they played for the last month and a half, I don't know if that's sustainable. Just with the intensity that they had to play out to win those games, right? It's hard to play that way in June and July as well as in September. So there's still some questions maybe in that arena, but I think the Tigers, there's no reason that we shouldn't be good for at least 4 more years.
Can you speak to Hinch? It was such a awkward ending in Houston for him after what happened. But the fan base, like just seeing him with the guys, the little speeches after and the champagne flowing, he just seems like he's going to be there long term. And the fan base, I mean, in pro sports, he could get fired at the start of next season. Who knows? But it certainly seems like the fan base has got to be thrilled with having him as the skip.
Yeah, he's done an unbelievable job, with the personnel that he's had to work with. Obviously, there was some frustration for the first few years while, trying to pan out some things, waiting for some guys to develop, seeing which draft picks are going to work out. But to go off base and just kind of develop a new brand of baseball based on the talent that he did have in a very unconventional way, I mean, it just makes the guy look like a genius, which he is a baseball guy. And knowing AJ, he's the kind of manager that gets done managing and then watches baseball the rest of the night. Then he wakes up and watches more baseball. So he eats it, lives it, breathes it. And, there's something about those redemption stories, when a guy gets a second chance.
Yeah.
Because he didn't know if there was going to be phone calls, kind of the way things played out in Houston. And he's very transparent about it. And when he gets his second chance, he's like, I'm going to give it everything I got. I'm not going to go out on that kind of note. And he's proven it. I mean, that staff works their tails off to be able to manage the way that they do.
Well, it's a great story so far. Again, we're only through 2 games in the playoffs. Now we're off to the ALDS, Detroit, Cleveland. You get through them, maybe the Yankees will be waiting. It's an incredible story. Enjoy it, Andy. We appreciate you doing this.
Yeah, will do. Thanks, guys.
Andy Dirks, former Tiger and Tigers radio broadcaster. They're jacked down there in Detroit, man. Those are cool stories. Like
Cinderella story.
Come out of nowhere, yeah. Like they had to blow it up, rebuild, like a lot of these teams do in baseball. A lot of these teams, it's just you bottom out, you have to accept it. You're going to be bad. And Detroit was really bad, and now they found something here.
Why can't something like this happen with the Jays, though?
That would be great.
Yeah, why can't they get some youth and some unconventional way to play and just get some young kids that just get it done? And it's a miracle season. Nothing like that ever happens around here.
You know what I was thinking about here, though? A year ago, you got Vladdy, Bo, Manoah's on the mound, this big horse that just looks to be like a Clemens type, in my mind, like that overpowering big body. And you fast forward, Manoah's I don't know. He's gone.
He's rehabbing. Exactly. I don't know when we'll see him pitch, if at all.
Exactly. Bo has a terrible season. I think Bo will bounce back.
Yes.
There'll be internal improvement from Bo Bichette. Just if you look at his previous 4-year stats, he'll be fine.
Nothing bothered. I don't know why. Nothing bothered my brother, who's a massive Jays fan. more than Manoah still being with the team. Like, he would just be – it was like he got designated for assignment or whatever, and he's still in the dugout with the Blue Jays, and my brother would go nuts. He'd be like, why is this guy still up here? Injured, still in the dugout, still traveling. He was just living the life of Riley. That drove him crazy.
Yeah. And it was a strange it
was weird all the way around, man.
Yeah, it was. Like, he just wasn't a part of the team, yet he was hanging on. And it was they obviously allowed for it, and they wanted to believe.
Yeah, I know. But it was also like he didn't want to face reality where it was like, I just love life in the big league so much that I don't want to, like, please let me stay or something. It was so bizarre.
Who's George?
Anybody else is just like gone. Like, go do your stuff. I don't know.
I'm with you. All right, we'll come back into Week 5, the NFL. Falcons, Bucks. Hayes and Bro are on the Falcons tonight. We need one. We desperately need one tonight. And Leafs in Detroit playing the Red Wings. We'll tee that up as well. Overdrive continues. TSN 1050 and on TSN 2. All right, Leafs Red Wings tonight down in Detroit. And it sounds as if, this is the last opportunity for some players to find a spot on the team. Or
I'm
at least
not buying that, dude. I think it's just like we're throwing you one more game. There's no opportunities, or no one's going to go out there and have a performance where everyone's going to go, did you see that? Let's get that guy a con. Of course, man.
Yeah, you're probably
right.
Well,
it depends. I mean, you're right. Like, somebody's not going to get a hat trick, and they're like, okay, now you made the team. But I think a guy can solidify his standing with the coach's trust. A guy like Robertson, I think he's on the team. They found a spot for him, but if he continues to play well, Craig Berube is going to go, geez, I might have to find this guy extra ice time type of thing. That's where I think Easton Cowan's going back to junior. I think, Pacioretty's on the team, but they've got decisions. But I agree. I don't think anybody's putting him over the top to make the team, but I think maybe standing within the trust of Craig Berube, that might change.
Yeah, they've been eyes on these guys for 3 weeks now, and it's not like someone's going to pop up and have a game where they're like, oh my God, need it, want it, gotta have it. No way.
Yeah, I hear you, but like Bobby McMahon's playing tonight, Steven Lorentz playing. He's still on a PTO. Are they gonna keep him? Is he?
I think they will. I think they should. I like him as a player. I really do. I think he's a heavy, good skater.
He's a big boy. I mean, 6'4", 215.
And a guy that just won a Stanley Cup that's looking for an opportunity. I'm finding a spot on my bottom six for him just to be around, to play. And I think he can play. And I want that. I want that on my team.
Okay. Well, then again, if he's getting signed and Pacioretty's getting signed, then something has to give up front. If Robertson's on the team, if Bobby McMahon's a lock to play.
And that's the decision that has to be made.
That's what they have to decide. And again, Timothy Liljegren is playing tonight. Like, Liljegren's playing on the road, and the rest of the defense is pretty much an American Hockey League defense corps.
Hey, right. You better watch yourself, Hayesy. He's got good numbers and everything else.
Okay. Then go tell Craig Berube that, because if he was solidified in his role, he'd be back in Toronto. He wouldn't be in Detroit tonight.
Well, who would you have as a sixth then?
It might be Timmins. Timmins has been playing ahead of him.
Yeah,
Timmins has been playing. I don't know if I love that either. Don't get me wrong. And they're Jockenpah they're waiting for, and I guess he skated today. And sounds like Hockenpah. What did I say? Jockenpah?
You said Jockenpah. Yanni Hockenpah.
Hockey Jannenpah. He's going to play, I would think, right? Like, once he's healthy and he gets the green light, that guy's going to step in.
Yeah.
But
I think he'll be. I think you'll see Hockenpah probably. He might have to start with the Marlies just to get something going. But I think he's. I think they envision him as their six. That
I agree.
Big. So I mean, you're right. Liljegren. If you got Oliver Ekman-Larsson and McCabe, Riley and Tanev, Benoit. That's six. That's the question mark right there.
There you go.
6, right?
Exactly. Liljegren, Timmins. I would put Liljegren ahead of Timmins personally, but we're talking about maybe the seventh defenseman right now.
Yeah.
So, and this could be the last time we see Easton Cowan. Like, he may go back to the London Knights. Maybe they play him on Saturday. Like, why not? Play him tonight, play him Saturday, get every single possible moment you can get.
Sure.
And then on Sunday they send him back, but I have to believe they're going to send him back too. And, well, wait until next year. And that'll be a challenge for him. You've done everything in the O, more or less. You got to go back there and be dominant and be a leader, and maybe be the captain of that team. Maybe
that's
be the
where they
captain
got to
of
find somewhere.
Canada.
Find an AHL. Like that's where that's got to change.
Ideally, that would be the case.
Like
but
going
again,
back to June.
If you're
crazy.
in the O, though, you love it, right? Like if the OHL doesn't want to lose that rule, it's huge for them.
That is very true.
And it is a big feeder system for them. So there's probably a little bit of negotiation going on there. But anyway, Leafs in action. Week 5 of the NFL. Tonight, Hayes and Bro, we're on the Falcons, laying 2.5 on FanDuel. All right, good stuff. Thanks to everyone behind the scenes for helping out today. Everyone for tuning in, TV, radio, podcast, web, we appreciate it. We're out of here. Enjoy your evenings. Enjoy the games tonight. We're back tomorrow at...
You're 6 for 5 on 4 today with the Jack Nicklaus putter raise. It's better than the Tiger Woods out of the bunker. 4 p.m.
We'll chat then.